Today, we're going to continue on with our NHL deep dive analysis for the upcoming Seattle Expansion Draft. We're looking at teams like the Dallas Stars, the New York Rangers, and the St. Louis Blues. Who will they protect? Who will be exposed? And who might Seattle take from these teams? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to continue on with our deep dive analysis here. So if you're new to this series, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to analyze the team's salary cap situation. Then we're going to use that data to determine who might be protected, who might be exposed, and the pick for the Seattle Expansion Draft likely to go from these teams to the Kraken. So we're going to hop onto the computer. We're going to go onto the capfriendly.com website, utilize the Seattle mock draft tool to go through all the lists here and make those determinations. So we'll now hop onto the computer and get started. All right, so let's get started here with the Dallas Stars. So as you can see, we're on a cap-friendly website looking at their page here. So they'd have $14.2 million in cap space right now heading to this offseason, but they only have 16 players under contract. So they have a fair bit of guys that are needing to be signed to replace here. As you can see in the forward group, they have a couple RFAs, a couple UFAs, as well as 3-4 defensemen here that need to be either signed or replaced as well. So clearly, they have some tough choices to make. Signing everybody will be a challenge. But, most of these guys at the same time here are not like big ticket, like big contract kind of guys, except for, on defense here, where they get Miro Heiskanen. He's about the only one that's going to drive a larger amount. Everybody else will be smaller deal. So now let's jump over to the draft simulator here for the Seattle expansion and see what their protection issues are. Now, we got word today that Ben Bishop has agreed to waive his no move clause for this expansion draft, and that is absolutely huge. Before this, it was pretty much a given that Hudobin would be exposed and likely be the pick for Seattle. I've done a few of these mock drafts now, and I picked Hudobin every time because he was the best option available. I mean, he's a guy who can play a lot at his age, 35 years old, making $3.3 million, only under contract till 2023. Like, it's a good option, but now that's not going to be an issue. Now you could take Ben Bishop, or you could take another player here, but they can keep Hudobin, which is the main thing for this team. Now they also have Colton Point, who they can expose here. Jake Ottinger, the young goalie, is exempt, so that's good. They don't have to worry about that. And then for right now, to me, they're going to protect Hudobin, so they're going to expose the newly waived Ben Bishop here, who hasn't played much in the past couple of years due to injuries, making $4.9 million for another 2 years. I personally don't see him being the selection. I wouldn't think, but you never know. Seattle might be intrigued by that. So let's take a look at what else there is here for options. On the blue line, pretty straightforward. You're going to protect Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, and John Klingberg. Those are your three options. For exposing purposes, you have Andre Sekera under contract at 1.5 for another year. You get 30-year-old Joel Hanley under contract for another couple of years at $700K. And you got youngster Julius Honka, who hasn't really proven himself. I mean, he might be a pick here for Seattle. That's a possibility, I guess. But Alexiak and Vatanen are UFAs. They're likely not going to be protected because they don't really need to be. On the forward side of things, it's not too complicated. I don't know how this is going to go. You've got three guys with a no move with Seguin, Ben, and Radulov, so they're all going to be protected. You got Joe Pavelski. That's a no-brainer. So that's four guys, and you got Faxa, Hintz, and Gurianov. Those three guys are fairly important players. They're likely going to be the ones that are going to be protected here. Now, of course, for forwards, you have to expose at least two guys under contract moving forward. So that likely explains why Blake Comeau got signed so quick. So he got another contract here for 1 year, 2.4. And now, if they knew that Bishop was going to be likely, waiving, and they could have went a different route here, because I thought they might go about things a little differently. But either way, they needed an extra forward here to expose regardless. So Como and Tanner Kero will be your two ones to help them meet that requirement. Otherwise, you do have Jason Dickinson here. He's 26 in RFA, coming off a contract of 1.5. He's probably the most intriguing forward that's available. Like I said, on the defense core, you got fairly unproven Julius Honka, who's now 25 and needing a new contract. Or you have the aging, banged up Ben Bishop, who's a great goalie, but certainly has a lot of wear and tear on that body. So I'm not sure what you do here. Now, thankfully, none of these guys are on longer term contracts. When it comes to Dickinson, they could sign him to a short term contract. It's not going to cost too much. He's an average, putting up 20, 25 points a year, so he's not going to be overly costly. If you go with Honka, you can probably do a 1-year deal again at 700 or 700,000. That's not going to cost you much either. And if you take Bishop, well, you get 2 years at 4.9. Bishop could be a guy that's maybe flipped. Maybe they retain some salary. Hard to say how they go about this here, because if you look around the NHL and look at all the goalies that are going to be available, they're going to have a lot of good choices. And I'd say there's probably at least 3 or 4, maybe even more than that I'd probably rank as a higher, better option than taking Bishop. So to me, I'm going to say the pick is probably Jason Dickinson, but Ben Bishop waiving certainly makes things interesting. And you have to wonder if Seattle is going to be interested and if he could end up being the pick here to Seattle. Or another thing is, will Dallas make a deal for them to take Bishop? They may have to pay to do that. If they can move on from that contract, even if they have to give up an extra draft pick or another player or something, I can see Jim Nill maybe working that option out. Because, now that they have Bishop waiving, that might be a real solid option for them. I wonder if they can pull that off. Let me know in the comments if you think the Dallas Stars are going to try to entice Seattle by giving them something extra to take Bishop off their hands. Before we jump on to the next team, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge one of our channel sponsors, Exter Smart Wallets. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Exter. Forbes calls Exter the most successful smart wallet brand in the world. They certainly have high quality products, high grade leather. You can put all your cards in your wallet with RFID protection, and you can track it worldwide. That's the best part. You don't have to worry about losing your wallet and not being able to track it down. They have a great selection of products to choose from here, a variety of colors and styles, something to surely help for everyone. As you can see in the demonstration here for the product I have, this is a beautiful packaging, high quality. When you open it up, you get a high quality wallet with lots of slots for your cards. You have yourself a money clip if you want to carry cash on you here as well. And certainly, as you can see, the quality is outstanding. And here you can see the switch where you can help open up your cards. You just one little click and boom, everything fans out right in front of you. Easy to access. Your cards are protected. And here's the back where you have yet another slot. A terrific overall product, and I can't recommend these enough. Exter ships worldwide, and you can check out the link down below in the description as well as the pinned comment to buy yours today. So thanks very much for watching that promotional video. Let's jump back into today's content. Now on to the New York Rangers. Now the Rangers are going to be an interesting team to watch as well. Now they have $22.8 million in salary cap space as of right now with a roster size of 18 players in place. So they do need to use some of that money to sign some of these players. And of course, they have a lot of young talent as well. Guys like Lafreniere and Kakko and, other guys, especially like Adam Fox, are going to be needing new contracts in the next year or two. With the cap not expecting to rise, they need to be conservative to a degree here in how they spend to make sure they can pay those players appropriately as those contracts come due here. I would expect Fox, for example, to get an extension likely this year if they can, because the longer he goes without it, the more expensive he is going to cost. There's no doubt. And the same goes for Kakko as well. He could be eligible for an extension, whereas Lafreniere will have to go another year. Now, of course, they do have some other players as well that could be in line for new contracts, like Hedel, Buchnevich, etc. And they are rumored to be in the Jack Eichel sweepstakes as we wait for that kind of trade to finally come together here. Now, of course, the other thing on the books here is Tony DeAngelo. Of course, they have his contract right now in cap friendly here buried, as you can see, which still counts on his on their cap hit for $3.6 million, and he won't be there by the time the season rolls around. He'll either be traded or bought out, most likely bought out, as we'll talk about here, which will free up a bunch more of that money. So their actual cap space is going to change, and it's going to change for the better. So let's jump over to the draft simulation expansion tool here on Cap Friendly and take a look at what they have and what is likely going to go down between protection and exposures here. Now, in goal, it's pretty simple. Young goaltender Igor Shesterkin's exempt because he doesn't have enough experience yet. So that brings us to Alex Georgiev and Keith Kincaid. So pretty simple scenario. You protect Georgiev and you expose Keith Kincaid. That's why he was signed. He was given another 1-year deal strictly for this purpose, in my opinion. So the Georgiev is still a potential guy who could be moved. I wouldn't completely rule that out, but for right now, they're not going to lose him for nothing, which is the main thing to protect him. So onto the blue line. Also, relatively straightforward here. There's nothing complicated. They're going to protect Jacob Trouba, 1, because they want to, and 2, because they have to. with that no move clause. And they're also going to protect Ryan Lindgren, who just was given a nice extension. The 23-year-old defenseman's kind of proven to be a pretty solid guy for them. And then you get Libor Hayek as well, who's an RFA, 23 years old. Makes sense. I mean, you have Tony DeAngelo, and the reason why Tony has not been bought out yet, because I've seen people talking about it and asking questions on the comment section on some of these videos as we talk about buyouts and stuff, is because why bother going through the buyout when you can expose him? Because, I mean, you have to have a certain number of players to expose for starters. And secondly, even if you have enough, wouldn't you want to give Seattle a chance to take him off your hands for nothing? Now, the odds of it happening are probably slim, but considering he's only got one more year at 4.8, I wouldn't completely rule it out. I mean, we'll see what the Kraken think here in Ron Francis, but you know what? Why not take the chance? You can buy him out later if it doesn't happen. So that's why. Now, so you get DeAngelo, you get Anthony Bitetto exposed here as well, and some other guys that are UFA, RFA that probably aren't going to interest Seattle. So pretty straightforward on the blue line. Up front in the forward group, not too complicated either. Now, we have three guys with a no move, and there are three players you would protect anyway, which is Panarin, Kreider, and Zibanejad. And then that leads us to Ryan Strome, Pavel Buchnevich, Philip Hedl, and I'm selecting Julian Gauthier as your seventh forward. Now, some might prefer to go for a Rooney or a Blackwell, but here's the rationale. Gauthier's only 23. He's an RFA, needs a new contract, and I realize that Blackwell and Rooney played well for the Rangers down the stretch this year. But considering their age, you're less likely, you're taking a smaller hit if one of them go. They're a depth player that may not get the same kind of role this year, to be completely honest, depending on what other moves they make. And then there's also the 23-year-old Brett Howden, who was just signed. And to me, another example of a player that was likely signed to entice Seattle. Now, they only have to have two forwards under a contract for the next season for exposure purposes. And they theoretically had that between Blackwell and Rooney. But, obviously having Howden in there as well, to me, they'd probably take Howden over those two. So you're not too worried about it if you're okay losing Brett Howden. And I think the Rangers would be. They have enough young players here they can afford to do that. That wouldn't be too big of a blow. So all in all, pretty straightforward for who they're going to protect and who they're not. So the Rangers are going to talk to Seattle, and it's likely going to be Howden or DeAngelo. I would not be surprised if Chris Drury and the Rangers at least try to convince Ron Francis to take Tony D, because if he can do that, then you don't have to do the buyout, and it does save you a little bit of cap space. Now, thankfully, where DeAngelo is still young enough, he's in that RFA category. So instead of a 2/3 buyout, it's only a 1/3 buyout. So they actually get a lot of that money back. And if we flip back over here to the other side of cap friendly, let's look at the DeAngelo contract. And if we do a buyout here, it'll tell you what it's going to work out to. So as you can see, they would get back $4.4 million of the savings. So that's pretty substantial. So, their initial cap hit 4.8 and it drops to 4. They save 4.4, sorry. So, they're only going to have a cap hit of $383,000 for the upcoming season. But you know what? In this day and age with a flat cap, $383,000 might go a long way to helping you secure another body or something. So if you can move that too, why not? Then you have $883,000 of dead cap space next year. So if you can throw a second round pick or maybe a prospect that you figure won't fit in your system or something to that effect to Seattle to take this off your hands, maybe you do that, and I can certainly understand why the Rangers would explore it. So I wouldn't be completely shocked if they can convince Seattle to do that. And then he ends up being the guy. Like I said, they have 1 year at 4.8. Maybe they trade him, maybe they keep him. I'm not sure. And then, of course, like I said, the other option that only makes sense here is Howden. So it's going to be Howden or DeAngelo. There's no doubt. Probably leaning towards Howden, but it's just interesting to have Tony D on the market for them for that to be considered. Would the Rangers be that lucky? I'm not so sure, but we'll find out here in short order. All right, our last team of the video here is the St. Louis Blues, and they are going to be another interesting team like many of these teams that we're looking at here. Now, they show us having $17.3 million in cap space. However, that's not going to go far because they have a ton of expired contracts. And the Blues are also a team, as you've probably been following along the channel, heavily rumored in a variety of trades, including one of their top paid players and Vladimir Tarasenko, who reportedly wants out. Now, when will we see a Tarasenko trade? I don't know. I mean, it's likely going to happen eventually, but you'd have to think if it doesn't happen before expansion, they're going to be probably forced to protect him just in case, so that make sure they don't lose him for nothing. But however, we've got a couple of options here. Like, look at the forward group. They've got 4 RFAs, including Barbashev, Sanford, Kyrou, and Thomas. Then you got Schwartz, Bozak, and Hoffman, all unrestricted. That's a big group. It's half the forward group. And then on the back end, you got Vince Dunn, who likely doesn't come back to St. Louis next year one way or another. And, other than that, you've got the Alex Dean contracts finally coming off the books. He's all done and retired. And Oscar Sundqvist is showing here on injury reserve where he finished last season. So obviously, like Dirk said, there's a lot to figure out here in St. Louis. They have a lot of money based on looking at that, but lots to figure out. So jumping over to the expansion draft tool, let's take a look. Now, in goal, pretty straightforward. You're protecting Binnington. He's your long-term commitment. And you have a couple other goalies you can expose here in Ville Husso and Evan Fitzpatrick. So along with John Gillies, not a big deal. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple to decide on that front. Now, on a blue line, again, not too complicated, but you do expose some decent options here. You've got Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and Colton Parayko, almost a guarantee to be your 3 protected D. I don't see them going with 4D, go like an 8 skater route. To me, I don't think that's an option because you're going to lose an even better forward if you do. Now, on the back end, you do end up exposing 31-year-old defenseman Marco Scandella, who signed for another 3 years. You got Bobby Bortuzzo, who signed for another year at 1.3. You got Mikkola, who signed for another season. And, of course, you get Jake Wallman, who's an interesting guy. And then you got Vince Dunn. Now, Vince Dunn is, like I said, rumored to be on the go. And I won't be shocked if a Vince Dunn trade happens before this expansion draft. Now, of course, they still have a couple of days here before their lists have to be sent in. And it's possible that even by the time this makes it to YouTube, I wouldn't be shocked if this ended up being completed, or it could happen after. Maybe he ends up being the guy to Seattle. But to me right now, based on what we've looked at, Vince Dunn is your leading contender. Jumping over to the forward group. All right, so you've got some interesting options here too, but obviously you're going to protect O'Reilly, Tarasenko, and Shen. Schwartz is a free agent. Bozak's a free agent. Hoffman's a free agent. You're going to protect David Perron, Oscar Sundqvist, and then Thomas and Kyrou is who I have here as the option. So that exposes Sammy Blais, Kyle Clifford, and Zach Sanford, and Ivan Barbashev, and Mackenzie McEachern as well. So lots of options here. Now you get Jacob De La Rose showing, but he's already head back to Europe. He won't be playing in North America. So there's all kinds of options here for Seattle to consider. Like the St. Louis Blues are in a predicament. They're going to lose somebody decent, but it's likely only going to be a depth player. But it really boils down to what they want to do here. That's why I won't be shocked if we see the Blues make a trade before expansion. I don't think it'd be a Tarasenko trade. I mean, I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I think something like that's going to take longer to come together. But when you get guys like Barbashev and Blais and Sanford all exposed here, along with Vince Dunn, it's tough. But to me, if I'm Seattle, based on this, without seeing any trades, Vince Dunn is my selection. I have no doubt about that. He's a young defenseman that needs a new contract, looking for more opportunity. We know he can be very capable offensively. He just needs a bigger role, and he's not going to get that on this deep Blues blue line with the 4 guys playing ahead of him. So really, to me, that's the pick for Seattle. But I wonder if St. Louis will try to make a deal here. If they trade Dunn ahead of time, especially if they get something like a future-based package, so like either a prospect or draft picks or something like that in return that they don't have to worry about for this, then they could maybe lose a forward instead if they prefer, which would likely be either Sanford, Blais, or Barbashev, depending on how Seattle feels about them all making similar money, similar age, just depends on which one I like the best, I guess. Kyle Clifford likely doesn't get picked up. He's under contract for another year too. So we'll see, but the Blues are in a fairly good position, but they're in a tough here that I would probably think they could get a better return on Dunn than anybody else. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a Dunn trade and then one of these forwards go, but we'll have to stay tuned. But to me, if I'm Seattle as of today, right now, without any changes, Vince Dunn is my selection. So that is my analysis on those 3 NHL teams. Of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.